Hello Internet! You're probably wondering why I have the camera pulled so far back that you can actually see the microphone I record these videos on. Well, that's because this is not a normal episode of Romney's Reviews. And, as you can guess by the title, I finally got a hold of my goddamn Crystal Pepsi. Now, I'm serious, this thing was hard to find because none of the stores near where I live were selling it. But luckily, the cola gods smiled upon me, and they finally started selling this at some of the grocery stores near where I live. That and my brother, who worked in an area where they were being sold, was kind enough to actually buy me a bottle so that I could actually finally try it. Now, to give you context as to what Crystal Pepsi is, well, it is basically Pepsi, but without the dyes that make it brown, like I have in this regular bottle of Pepsi that I also bought to kind of establish a baseline. Now, during a time called the Cola Wars, which was during the 90s, you basically had Coca-Cola, Pepsi, and for a brief time, Royal Crown, trying various gimmicks to basically outdo one another and become the Cola Supreme. In the case of Pepsi, you had stuff like Crystal Pepsi, you had Pepsi Blue, you had various other variations thereof. With Cola, that's what led to stuff like New Coke, which many people choose to forget ever existed. Now, I never got to try Crystal Pepsi in its heyday because, well, I wasn't even out of the womb yet, because this came out initially in 1992 and was off the shelves by 1994, so by the time I was even in some form to actually try it, well, I was only 2 years old, and so it passed me by. Although I did, oddly enough, have a weird Pepsi-themed baby bottle. I don't know where my mom got it, I just knew that it existed. So, yeah, take that for what it's worth. So, what I'm explaining here is that I have never tried this before. Now, I bought this and well, I didn't buy this, my brother bought this, but I also bought a bottle of regular Pepsi to kind of do a comparison taste test to see if there is any difference in the tastes of the colas, or if they taste exactly the same. I also have a bottle of water here so that I can cleanse my palate after basically tasting one before tasting the other. Now, looking at the ingredients list here, you basically see that the ingredients are mostly the same: carbonated water, high fructose corn syrup, phosphoric acid, caffeine, and citric acid, and natural flavor, whatever form of bug parts they use to make that. But with Crystal Pepsi, you notice that they have a couple of extra ingredients in the case of sodium benzoate, which is a preservative, sodium citrate, and gum arabic. Now, whether or not this will affect the flavor, I have no idea because I don't really know what those ingredients are. Let's face it, soda is not necessarily the healthiest drink anybody can put in their body, but that's not what you're all here for. You're not here for a lecture. You're basically here to see, what I think of Crystal Pepsi, if it's worth bringing back, or if it is just a nice little throwback that it will be enjoyable during the limited time that Pepsi decides to re-release it. So, what I'm going to do first is that I'm going to open and taste the bottle of regular Pepsi to establish a sort of baseline, to kind of get an idea of, okay, this is how Pepsi normally tastes. So let's go ahead. Have not opened these, so let's go ahead and open these up. Yep, got the nice fizzy here. So, here is me tasting the regular Pepsi. Well, nice, sweet. Does a good job with the sip test. It's basically Pepsi. It's a cola. Not as sweet per se as Pepsi, like a little too sweet, but for the sip test, it's good. Consumed in excess, though, you get sick of it pretty quickly. That's just my own personal experience. So there's our baseline. That is Pepsi, as we know it, as it is on the shelf that you can go to any store across the United States and buy it. Now, first, gotta cleanse my palate after trying that baseline. So now let's open up the Crystal Pepsi. Definitely has a different fizz to it. Not as many bubbles from the looks of it. Didn't really form like a nice head. Looks kind of like Sprite almost. But now, moment of truth. Well, I don't smell anything weird because I was almost expecting kind of an alcohol smell, oddly enough. I don't know why. I guess it's just because I've been around rubbing alcohol for too long. So now the actual taste. It tastes similar, but it's hard because their brain can trick yourself, but here it's got kind of a lemon limey sort of taste. It's got more of a citrusy, more of a fruity flavor to it. And I don't know if that's because my brain is tricked by the fact that it's clear or not, or because of the added ingredients, but it's interesting to say the least. Let me just cleanse my palate again. Alright, let's take a page from the wine taster. Let's do what I like to call the swirl test, where you swirl it across your tongue, get it onto the various taste buds, and see just if I can identify what's going on. That was a bad idea. That was a really bad idea. The bubbles, yeah, they burn. And I think that's kind of the real thing, is because I couldn't really get much of the flavor of this because of the fact that it fizzes so quickly on the tongue. So yeah, it almost tastes like kind of a watered down soda almost. Kind of like you've had ice in it for a while. And so it's not as sweet. Like, it has a different sort of sweetness, but it's not as sweet as regular Pepsi. That's what I'm noticing here. Yeah, definitely not as sweet. And I realized that the citrusy I was tasting... Yeah, the citrusy flavor I'm tasting probably was more my brain tricking itself. But it tastes like a less sweet version than this one. I don't know if it's because the recipe of Pepsi has changed over the years. But that's the best way I can describe it. It tastes like a less sweet version of the regular Pepsi. Let me just taste the normal kind just to compare. You know, after having Crystal Pepsi, they do taste kind of similar now. That's kind of what I'm noticing here, is that they do have a pretty similar flavor now that I'm actually tasting this again to compare. Yeah, they taste about the same, getting kind of that weird cough syrup sort of aftertaste to it, but that's more of an effect of, well, cola being cola. Gonna try it without rinsing. Nah, I gotta keep it consistent. So let's try this again. Yeah, they taste about the same, really. It's just, there is like a mild difference in sweetness, but it's exactly that. Very, very mild. Now, a lot of this may be attributed to the fact that it's probably my brain tricking itself because of the fact that this is clear and this is not. So, we're gonna have to do something a little bit different to see if there really is a difference in taste. Hey, Scott? Alright everyone, after a little bit of transition, I'm standing off camera, and the person you see sitting where I was sitting is my brother Scott, whom many of you may recognize from my Hateful Eight video. Wave hello to the people. Now, what we are going to do is that we are going to do a blind taste test, where I'm going to fill each of these glasses with the beverage. Scott here will put on a blindfold, or basically he will pull the bandana over his eyes so that he cannot see. Go ahead and do so now. And we're basically going to determine, and you may want to do a bit of better job than that, like...
I realize that.
Yeah.
You want me to put it in my mouth? You want to repeat what happened on Saturday? Oh god, no.
Yeah, alright. So what we're going to do, now, he has not tasted either of these beverages. This is literally him tasting, like, he's tasted Pepsi, but he has not tasted Crystal Pepsi, so we are going to determine, with the factor of sight taken out of the equation, can he differentiate between regular Pepsi and Crystal Pepsi. The water bottle in the middle is to allow him to cleanse his palate. Hopefully I've filled equal amounts. I just had to slide his hands over to the glasses, so raise the glasses in front of the camera so people can see, so the audience can see what is in which beverage. Do not shake it, please. All right, you may now lower them. All right. What I'm going to have you do first, have you had any water to cleanse your palate?
I already did.
All right, all right, let us begin by starting with the glass in your right hand, please.
Okie dokie.
All right, how would you describe the flavor you're tasting there?
Pepsi.
Okay. All right, well, let us then take the intermediary by opening the bottle of water so you can cleanse your palate.
Okay.
All right. Now proceed by taking a sip from the glass in your left hand. All right, and how would you describe that flavor?
Again, Pepsi.
All right. Which Pepsi do you think was the Crystal Pepsi?
Right.
And you would be correct. How did you figure out which was the which?
This seems more original, where this one seems weaker. More acidic.
Okay.
So less of a actual Pepsi flavor. It's still like tastable.
That's the water, don't worry.
Terrified me there for a second. So even though it has a Pepsi flavor like these two, the difference is that this one has a more of a Pepsi taste. So it has the smoothness to it. Where this one, though still Pepsi, is a little bit more acidic. Hence why it would burn a little bit if you leave it into your mouth initially. But it's not too bad. It's basically the same thing.
That is why my taste test went so horrifically wrong, was because the bubbles burned my tongue. So you may now remove the blindfold.
Hold on. Let me do one more test. Oh god, it doesn't taste good when you drink it in large amounts.
That's kind of the problem with Pepsi in general, isn't it?
It's the Crystal Pepsi that's kicking my ass, though. It's like, what the hell is that aftertaste? Or lack of taste? I don't know.
Alright, well, you can remove the headband now. So, yeah, so even with the factor of sight removed, there is a slight difference in the flavor, and that was kind of the point of this experiment, was to see if they tasted exactly the same or if there was a difference. So everyone thanks Scott for being the guinea pig.
Someone get me out of here. He won't let me leave.
Alright, time to transition back to me in the chair.
No, wait!
So there you have it. Even with the element of sight removed, there is a slight difference in flavor between Crystal Pepsi and regular Pepsi. As both my younger brother and I have discussed, this is slightly less sweet and a little bit more acidic, which is why the bubbles kind of burned my tongue when I was trying to do the swish test. And, well, this has a bit more of a rich flavor. As for my thoughts on Crystal Pepsi as a drink in general, it's okay. Not really worth writing home about. I mean, the only reason I was annoyed that I couldn't find it is just because of the lack of availability, which was probably intentional on PepsiCo's part. As for the drink itself, the novelty wears off pretty quickly, so I don't really see it sticking around beyond this little fun, limited run. I mean, if you enjoy it, by all means enjoy it, but really, well, honestly, Pepsi's not really my cola of choice anyway, but between the two, I much rather would go with classic Pepsi over Crystal Pepsi. And I'm not going to really give it a rating because I haven't really reviewed a food product before on my channel, so I'll just leave it as a, well, fun novelty, not as sweet, a little more acidic, doesn't really last much beyond the novelty of it being clear and messing with your brain a little bit. I think I'll just stick with the classic Pepsi, thank you very much. So that's it for this little special episode of Romney's Reviews. Thank you for watching. I'll see you all next time. Mixing the two just makes a watered down Pepsi, apparently. This was a mistake.